In today's big interview, we talk with Justin Mudge, who's the chairman of Berries South Africa, one of the sectors that is getting really hammered by the Transnet strike. Justin, thanks for your time and for actually updating us on what is happening as far as your industry is concerned. Just by way of background, how big is the South African berry production area? In other words, how many people are involved in picking berries for export, presumably, because that's what we're talking about today? And how successful are they in a global context?
So I think if we talk in round numbers, the berry industry is approximately 3,000 hectares. And for every hectare that needs to be harvested, we're talking about 10 harvest opportunities per hectare, and then somewhere in the region of north of 3 permanent employees per hectare. So probably somewhere in the region of 40,000 employees that have their livelihoods at stake due to the Transnet strike.
And how long has South Africa been in the global berries market? Is this an area that has expanded recently, or have we been a player there for a long time?
There have been small volumes of blueberries since the mid-90s in South Africa, but really very small. But since 2005, when access to newer genetics put us in a timing slot from, let's call it September to December, then it became a much more attractive industry. And probably since about 2015, you will see that the graph has just taken off, and we've really added a lot of hectares in the last 5 years, and it has become a significant industry in South Africa.
The investment per hectare, to just give us a feeling of, because a hectare doesn't sound like a lot, but when you talk about 10 people being employed for each hectare that is being cultivated.
Yeah, so I mean, it ranges depending on your investment strategy. The top end investment with structure and medium and pots can be north of 3 million rand a hectare, but probably the average is probably sitting somewhere around about 1.8, 1.9 million rand per hectare.
So it's intensive.
It's extremely intensive, and it's a very high value product. And that's the reason why we are particularly hot in the pipes and getting very excited about this protracted strike, because it is also a highly perishable product that cannot age on the bush or cannot be left on the bush to be harvested when the ports open. We have to continue harvesting and we have to continue shipping. Otherwise, we destroy the inherent quality of the product, because every day that we can't ship is a day's worth of shelf life that our customer loses. And we're already struggling to ensure that our quality perception that's inherent to South African fruit production is maintained because of the unseasonal and untimely delays that the berry industry has experienced for the last 4 years consecutively.
Can't you fly it out?
Of course, we can put it in an aeroplane, but with the worldwide production of berries where it is no longer viable to fly. The market pricing, because of the way supply and demand has balanced out, means that it is now based on a sea freight price. If you air freight it, yes, you can get some concessions from your customers in times of their need. Then they might be prepared to pay the premium to fly it. But with the quality of berries that we have now, and with the ability to sea freight, that is the benchmark price. So yes, we can fly it, but we certainly can't fly the kind of volumes that we're producing out right now. There are not enough flights. And I mean, I've just seen a news article coming out that we're probably going to run out of airplane fuel too. So that's not really an option either. So it really is such a dire situation for us.
Yeah, we struggle here in South Africa with challenges that seem to be almost insurmountable, yet somehow we get around them. But right now, as far as Transnet is concerned, just explain to us, if you would, the journey from the berry being picked, and presumably that's the real problem, is that the berries can't just stay in the field. They need to be picked at a certain time of the year, and that time of the year is now.
Is right now. So, our peak weeks are from week 40 to week 48 as an industry. There's a reasonable tail after week 49, and there's volume that is, that comes in before week 40, but those are really the shoulders. So we're right in the middle of it right now. And most genetics will allow you to pick maybe once a week, and in some cases twice a week. And then the target is to get that fruit onto its journey within 72 hours. That's the kind of timelines that we try and hold ourselves to as an industry, because every single day that we can save in the journey gives our customer the flexibility to, flex as demand from retail kicks in. So it's a very critical flow that needs to be maintained. And with weekly shippings, you can arrange with your receivers to manage the volumes, etc., etc. But if you now have a hiatus of 10 or more days, you're basically landing twice the product in the market. Or if this thing is protracted, we're going to land 3 times the volume in the market, 3 to 4 weeks from now. Well, the market is just not that kind of flexible. And then the only mechanism that you have is to discount and to go into massive deep cutting promotions to move the volume. And right now, that's just not viable for the majority of blueberry producers. Fruidata, which is an economic benchmarking survey, has said that a third of all producers are at risk of not breaking even in the coming season. And that's not because they're bad farmers. It's because we're in a nascent industry where we're still learning a lot. We still have to identify which genetics works in which regions. There's a lot of experimentation taking place. And so we are, and with the change in supply and demand dynamics, a lot of producers are going to be at risk because the price is not there to cover the errors as it was perhaps in the past.
So presumably berries are perishable. They can't last forever. How long, though, can they last for?
I think what we're targeting now as a worldwide industry is to say we need 42 to 56 days of shelf life. So that gives you perhaps 3 to 4 weeks on the water and 3 to 4 weeks to move the product in the market, because we do need some flexibility, and the modern genetics is there. But a lot of producers still have legacy varieties or some of the previous generation of genetics, which certainly doesn't have that kind of shelf life.
So what's the bottom line of all of this? We've had the Transnet strike going on already for a period of time that some producers must be saying, hang on a minute, I'm employing a few thousand pickers. What is the point of actually picking the blueberries? I've got to pay them. I'm not going to get it through the ports, and I'll have to disappoint my customers on the other end. And so why would I actually just increase the losses, which appear now pretty obvious?
So, I mean, that's a very difficult decision to take at this stage of the piece, in that whatever you leave on the bush will then carry on maturing and will eventually, and will, by the time that you can reactivate picking, will then become a quality problem. So if you were at the tail end of your season, you just abandon ship. And you'd be able to do that. But for the vast majority of producers, remembering that 70% of the berry industry is centered here in the Western Cape, and this is their peak. The guys up north might be coming a bit towards the end of their season. They might more easily be able to take that decision. But in my own operation and my own business, we're not even 10% in yet. The next 10 weeks or the next 8 weeks are absolutely critical for us. And so if I stop picking now, it's feasible. I can do that. But ultimately, I will then have to go and strip off everything that looks like a blueberry that is not yet ripe, and then reset my season and start again. But the cost remains the same. I've still got to pick the blueberry.
So, what exactly has Transnet, or how has it responded to the calls that you've clearly given to the management team there to find a way of assisting you in this, in getting the blueberries on the water?
Well, currently the discussion is around prioritizing fresh produce when we get back up and running. But what I find so hard to believe is that there is zero contingency plan in place. We have no ability to carry on shipping, even in a limited volume. Even if, and selfishly, I'd be batting for berries to be the 10 containers or 20 containers or 80 containers that need to be shipped. I'd be batting for them to just move the blueberry containers, because at that way we protect the tens of thousands of jobs that are at stake here. But they have zero contingency plan, and for me that's completely unacceptable. I can't have zero contingency in my own business. I must have contingency plans, but Transnet has got zero plans to deal with this.
So let me understand this now. If you are producing berries in South Africa, you have only one route to market, and that is through the ports, and that is controlled by the government. It's controlled by a state entity, Transnet. So if Transnet is, on the one hand, inefficient, which we know our ports are amongst the worst in the world, then that's your tough luck. If Transnet has a strike like it's having right now, well, that's even more tough luck for you. Is there no alternative? Is there no private sector way of perhaps competing with government, if not now, into the future?
The government has been talking about creating concessions for private operators in the ports for years, and we don't get it over the line. There's no real willingness to engage meaningfully with the private sector to make sure that the export businesses have optionality. Right now, what are our options? We can ship out of Maputo. That it is an option, but there's only a sailing bi-weekly. So then we're into 14-day sailings, which it's not really an option. Walvis Bay is potentially an option, but we don't seem to be able to get it over the line there either. That it doesn't seem to be that there's a willingness and a flexibility and a contingency planning in place that says that when Transnet goes out of action, ship to Walvis. That's not happening either. So I'm very frustrated that, given the situation that we're in, we almost apathetic about our situation. And as South Africans, we've become so complacent and so kind of accepting of this kind of poor performance and poor service delivery that we just sort of like roll over and say, it'll blow over, we'll sort it out when we get to the other side. But that's not an option for us.
When you talk about poor performance, what is it? Has there been any impact on producers like yourself who are dealing in products that are perishable and presumably would be at the sharp end of any inefficiencies that you're seeing in the ports, on the rail? Is there, for instance, higher returns if you're shipping furniture and it's poorly managed along the path and something gets broken? Well, that gets returned back to you. I can just imagine with berries, it must be an even bigger issue. Have you seen the returns from your customers growing in recent times because of inefficiencies at the ports?
Well, in the last season, I'm very reticent to give this number because it's almost shameful, but 33% of berries in the survey and the survey is significant. It's nearly it's north of 80% of the tons exported, but 33% of those berries had some or other claim against them, predominantly quality claims. And that's really down to the poor shipping service that we received last year. I mean, it was so disrupted. We're talking about normal end-to-end of 21 days became 42 days. That's not all down to the South African ports, but, we were talking about vessels at anchor for 14 days last year. It's that kind of inefficiency. And as a result thereof, that average cost of claim is 40 Rand a kilo. Well, we just do the numbers, and that adds up to more than R250 million lost within the berry industry. And that R250 million is affecting growers' sustainability. It's affecting my sustainability as a berry business. And I regard myself as a reasonably good berry farmer and berry operator. But our sustainability is at stake. And what's really frustrating is it's inhibiting our ability to grow the berry industry in South Africa. And we have such a massive opportunity sitting on our doorstep, and our competitors in Peru, and embarrassingly, I grew more blueberries than Peru did in 2010. So, the Peruvian industry has since grown to 17,000 hectares, exporting in the region of 280,000 tons of berries in the same time that South Africa, I'm almost going to say, has been sitting on their hands, but not facilitating the kind of growth and opportunity that does exist. And that growth and opportunity is not going away. It's there and will remain. If we look at consumption in our principal markets of the UK and Europe, the UK is at 800 grams per person per capita per annum. Europe is at 26. That is the scale of opportunity that we can leverage if we can encourage Europeans to eat berries. And that's then really will throw the supply-demand dynamic completely in the other direction and create massive opportunity for growth in South Africa and to leverage the kind of jobs and not just jobs, but career opportunities, because berries are an intensive crop. They require a level of skill and, it's not extensive agriculture that don't want to be condescending that anybody can do. You need to be a skilled operator. And so there's a huge opportunity for people to get well established in careers in berry farming in South Africa. But if we carry on the way we are right now, that opportunity is going to disappear.
So how much does South Africa export per annum? What's the Rand figure?
Well, last year we exported somewhere in the region of 20,000 tons. And we can conservatively say that that's probably in the region of 1.8 billion Rand. And this year we're looking to export somewhere in the region of 25,000 tons. And that should get us to just underneath the 3 billion Rand mark in the 2022 campaign.
And that's now all at risk because of the Transnet strike.
It's largely at risk. And the reputational damage that one does when one cannot service your customers according to plan. And remember that we these planning campaigns as early as February, we start agreeing with our suppliers, our receivers. What is it that we can supply in what given weeks and in what kind of categories are we going to supply into? Those planning sessions start already in February, and we commit to those. And as a fruit producing region in South Africa, we have a really good reputation about honoring and delivering on our commitments. Right now, we are blowing our reputation out of the water by not being able to deliver on those commitments.
What's the solution to all of this, Justin?
In my view, it's really simple. We cannot have, and quite frankly, how has the Competition Commission allowed Transnet to have a monopoly? If everybody else cannot create a monopoly, how can Transnet create a monopoly? I'm sorry, that doesn't stack up with me. But really what we need is independent port operators, preferably multiple in each port, but at least independent port operators in all of South African ports. So if Durban goes out on strike, we can ship from Cape Town. If PE goes on strike, we can ship out of Durban. But there's absolutely no ways that we can curtail the import and export industry in South Africa because we are so dependent as an economy on our exports.
And what's the reason for Transnet's monopoly?
Because I guess that's how it's always been. But, there's no justification. There's absolutely no justification for it to continue. And there's no justification if the performance is so poor. Then one would say, then it's an absolute, if the performance was brilliant and they were facilitating and encouraging and developing the ports to service the industry, one would leave them to it. But that's not the case. There's been so many cases of neglect of maintenance and neglect of reinvestment that our ports, that's why our ports are so inefficient and so unproductive, because the equipment that they're working with is aged and out of date.
And our ports are amongst the worst in the world, according to independent. 1,000 people here that are at risk. And let's hope that some bell is ringing very loudly where it needs to be. Justin Mudge is the chairman of